What if I told you the war we're watching unfold on our screens, the headlines, the alliances, the rising threats, isn't new? That this battle between Israel and Iran was written not in the corridors of governments, but in the sacred pages of Scripture. That long before rockets lit up the skies, the heavens had already declared the end from the beginning. In the age of digital warfare and nuclear arms, we're quick to blame politics, ideologies, and economics. But what if behind the military strategies and political headlines lies something more ancient, more spiritual? What if the hostility between Iran and Israel is not merely geopolitical, but prophetic? To understand this mystery, we must journey back thousands of years to a barren wilderness where one man received a promise that would shape the future of nations. Abraham, the father of faith, was given a divine covenant. To your offspring I will give this land, Genesis 12:7. But before Isaac, the child of promise, was born, Abraham had another son, Ishmael, through Hagar, the Egyptian servant. Ishmael was loved, he was blessed, but he was not the child through whom the covenant would flow. Genesis 17:20-21 records God's words, "As for Ishmael I have heard you. I will surely bless him, but my covenant I will establish with Isaac." Two sons, two destinies, two nations that would one day stand on opposite sides of prophecy. Ishmael's descendants gave rise to many of the Arab tribes, including those that would one day shape the Islamic world. Through Isaac came Jacob, renamed Israel, and the 12 tribes that carried the covenant into history. But there's a third branch we often overlook, descendants of Japheth, son of Noah. From Japheth came Madai, Genesis 10:2, whose descendants merged with another mighty people, the Persians. This union birthed the Medo-Persian Empire, what we now know as modern-day Iran. So the players were set: Israel, born of Isaac; Persia from Japheth; and many Arab nations descended from Ishmael, each with a divine link, each with a role in the unfolding plan of heaven. Persia didn't always stand as an enemy to Israel. In fact, God once used her as an instrument of mercy. When the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem and carried the Jews into exile in 586 BC, hope seemed lost. But through the prophet Jeremiah, God had promised, "When 70 years are completed, I will bring you back." Jeremiah 29:10. Enter Cyrus the Great, a pagan king, yet prophesied by name over 150 years before his birth. Isaiah 45:1 calls him Cyrus, my anointed one, whose right hand I take hold of to subdue nations before him. This Persian king would conquer Babylon and issue a decree that set the Jews free, allowing them to return and rebuild the temple. Ezra 1:1-3. Persia, once outside the covenant, became a vessel of divine restoration. Through Cyrus, God showed that he can use even foreign kings to fulfill holy purposes. But Persia's story didn't end there. Years later, under the reign of King Xerxes, also known as Ahasuerus, a sinister plot emerged. A high-ranking Persian official, Haman, devised a decree to exterminate all Jews in the empire. But God had already positioned a young Jewish girl, Esther, in the palace. She would risk her life, reveal Haman's plot, and save her people. Esther 4:14 still echoes, "Who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" Again, Persia became the battleground of deliverance. But beneath the miracles lived a shadow, a spiritual tension. What had once been a land of restoration now carried the seed of destruction. That seed would grow, and centuries later, Persia would rise again, not with decrees of freedom, but with cries of annihilation. In 1979, the Islamic Revolution birthed a new Iran. No longer a monarchic ally, Iran became a theocratic regime rooted in Shiite Islam, declaring its mission to be both political and spiritual. Central to that mission, the eradication of Israel. Iran's leaders refer to Israel as the Little Satan, vowing to wipe her off the map. They fund Hezbollah, Hamas, and other terror groups. Their constitution denies Israel's right to exist, and behind the politics lies a darker power. Daniel 10 reveals something few consider. The prophet fasted for 21 days before an angel appeared, delayed by a supernatural enemy. The prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me. Daniel 10:13. This was no human monarch. It was a spiritual principality, a demonic force operating behind Persia. If such a prince ruled then, who rules behind Iran today? The Bible is clear. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world. Ephesians 6:12. Iran's enmity toward Israel is not merely political, it's spiritual. And this spiritual war was prophesied. Ezekiel 38 paints a chilling picture, a future coalition of nations rising against Israel. At the center of this alliance is none other than Persia, Ezekiel 38:5. Alongside them, nations from North Africa and regions north of Israel, led by a mysterious figure named Gog from the land of Magog. Some scholars link Gog and Magog to regions near modern-day Russia or Central Asia. Others see broader symbols of an anti-Israel confederacy, but the message is the same. A massive force will unite in the last days to destroy Israel. Yet God is not silent. Ezekiel 38:18-23 describes the Lord's fury. I will execute judgment with plague and bloodshed, hailstones, fire, and burning sulfur. Then they will know that I am the Lord. This is no ordinary war. This is divine justice. The world will witness what happens when nations rise against God's covenant. So, what are we witnessing today? Iran's growing aggression, its military reach, its nuclear aspirations. Could these be pieces of the Ezekiel puzzle falling into place? Zechariah 14:2-4 gives even more clarity. The nations will gather against Jerusalem, but then the Lord will go out and fight against those nations. On that day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, the very place where Jesus ascended, Acts 1:9-12, will be the place of his return. And when he comes, it won't be to negotiate, it will be to reign. Because the war ends, not in surrender, but in glory. Revelation 19:11-16 declares the end with majesty. Heaven opens, a white horse appears, and the one who rides it is called Faithful and True. With justice he judges and makes war. On his robe is written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Psalm 2 asks, why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? The answer is clear. The one enthroned in heaven laughs, saying, I have installed my king on Zion. Yes, the conflict is rising. Yes, Iran is bold. Yes, the days may shake the earth, but the throne of God is unshaken. The church must not be silent. Psalm 122, 6 commands, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, not just as a gesture, but as a prophetic alignment. We must discern the hour, watch the signs, and prepare, not for fear, but for the return of the King. The war may be written, but how we respond is still being written today.